Hello and welcome to the ReConnect podcast, a weekly show sponsored by Anasazi Foundation and powered by Sturry. I'm your host, Gainalyn Condi, and the purpose of this podcast is to help you improve your life by strengthening your most important relationships and connecting to your truest self. This is my guest today, Jesika Harmon, and I'm so thrilled to have her. She's with The New Norm. I love your why, and so let's just kind of get right started with what The New Norm is and how it came to be.
Yeah, I'll start with the how it came to be first, which was about a year and a half ago. A girlfriend and I, Hillary Whalen, we were on a hike with our families. My husband happens to be her cousin, so it was a big Thanksgiving Day hike. And she has children the same age as mine, 5 kids, and the oldest at that time was almost 11.
Okay.
And
how old is your oldest, by the way?
So now she's 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
So similar age ranges. Which I think plays into the behind the scenes of this story. Okay.
Definitely. So we're having the conversation of they both had birthdays coming up, and what are you giving? And we started talking about how all of their friends were starting to get smartphones. And not even just them, but our second children, who were at the time 9, their friends were starting to get smartphones, and we just said,
9.
Are you okay with that? Why am I not okay with that? And why do I feel like I'm the only one that's not okay with that? Mm-hmm. And we just started talking about an article that had just come out, Jean Twenge. It was about a year and a half ago, like I said, in The Atlantic, that I feel like was one of the first articles about this that started sharing research.
Jean Twenge.
Jean Twenge,
Which is a weird name, and I love weird names because I have the weirdest name.
Okay. No, she's fabulous, and she wrote the book called iGen, which maybe you've heard of.
Yeah.
But it just started sharing statistics about trends they started seeing in teenagers once about 50% of the population had a smartphone. About the ways kids were spending their times, the lack of desire to date, to drink, to get their driver's license, any of those type of activities were all declining, and then suicide, depression were all inclining.
The desire to drink was declining?
Yes. No drugs or alcohol, no sex, no desire to drive, no...
Which you would think would be a good thing, right?
Exactly. Which I thought the same thing at first, like, okay, I guess
that's good. But they were so disconnected.
But it's that they're not having real life relationships, only virtual relationships. And so we started talking about this article and just said, okay...
That's kind of mind-blowing.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? And so it just kind of started both of us on a journey of we're going to see what else is out there about this topic, and really started researching. And I was surprised at how much there was. There were articles.
I cut you off because I am familiar with the work I do with suicide prevention and depression and anxiety, that then the opposite, the transverse, is also true. The statistics for those issues increase with how much technology.
Right. And what was interesting to me, it wasn't just like this subtle increase in some of those behaviors and a subtle decrease on the, not wanting to drive, those kind of things. It was like poof, poof, like skyrocket, or I mean, just really, really extreme. And she was really surprised about it, and that led her to do a ton more research and come out with this book. But what I thought was so interesting is that there was a lot of research coming out. Obviously, they couldn't draw any conclusions because there hadn't been enough time. So Hillary and I said, we're going to start interviewing parents who have, because like I said, ours were just 11 at this time.
So you were approaching this decision-making time where you were afraid, because it's a pretty powerful tool. I mean, what is in one smartphone? Let's have context, right? That can fuel and run a large corporation now, right? I mean, that's a lot of data and access with the internet, and so much distraction. So it's a pretty powerful. It's so common for us now.
Well, and we just started thinking we don't want to just base our decision off of what everyone else is doing. Even though it seems like maybe it's harmless, maybe it's okay, maybe it's not that big of a deal, but we just felt like let's just
the social
get
pressure
all of the information
that everyone's doing it, so it feels normal because a culture has decided it's normal.
And so many wonderful parents that were really good, really
mindful.
On top of things, really mindful about how they were raising their kids. We're handing out the smartphones, and so we just thought maybe there's something we're missing. I don't want to be judgmental. I don't want to jump to any conclusions. So we started meeting with some different moms and found it was the spectrum of moms who had said, okay, we're not doing any technology in our home. My kids will never have a smartphone.
Which is also challenging because you leave the nest.
Yes.
You have to have a computer and a smartphone to function.
We live in a technology world.
And it's based.
We use it for everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then your children aren't practicing it within the constraints of a safety zone, right?
And then on the other end, friends of ours who were then, not only did their kids have a smartphone, but they could also do all of the social media apps. They were on Snapchat, they were on Instagram, they were on Twitter, all of these things. And those parents are saying, it's just how it is now. That's just how teenagers communicate.
So it feels,
that's just how it is.
It feels as a parent, what you're saying is the new norm came from this feeling of there was this tidal wave coming at you. Could you ride it, or were you going to get drowned by it? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
And also in the sense of feeling like from those two spectrums, what we found in the middle were parents that were like, I don't know what to do. I don't feel good about no technology, but I don't feel good about all of it either. So what do I do?
Thus the new norm. This is our new norm. I tell my kids all the time, I have a 21-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I say, Dad and I are making decisions around technology based on no experience.
No experience.
We didn't grow up with these rules. We had rules around driving and the cord that had been so stretched so long around the corner to go to the closet, and then you listen for the little click click to see if someone listened to your conversation.
Yes.
And social stuff we weren't prepared for. We would wait 2 weeks to hear we didn't get invited to a party.
Yes.
By the time you go to school on Monday, you've already seen all weekend long your friends were all doing things, and maybe you weren't. All those things are just new.
Or you find out at lunch. You find out at lunch, and then your whole school day is completely taken over by these emotions that a 7th grader should not have to deal with right now.
Yes. And then also just the socialization of, I mean, I'm 48 this week, and
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yay.
And I think oftentimes my parenting in my 30s is very different than it is now. And I remember then feeling like, okay, are there moms? Have they potty trained already? Are we behind? Are we whatever?
Yes.
And now there's so many mommy bloggers, and there's so many Instagrammers that are telling you this is how your living room should look. This is what your dress should be. You should be exercising this way, and your food should be looking like this. And so it's not just our kids. It's we're trying to parent it, but we're living it too, and we're being triggered by this new norm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like that phrase, the new norm,
I love it.
Came out of we need to create a new norm. What everyone is saying, it's just normal now. It's just how it is.
Let's
just how
create
it is.
a new
Let's
norm.
create a new norm.
I
Let's
love
make
that.
it normal to not have our 12-year-olds all have phones. Let's make it normal for when they're at my house to say, you guys go outside. You guys go build a fort or start the night games. My husband and I have decided, you know what, we're just going to have to help plan some things, initiate some things sometimes. And a cousin of mine told me actually that has her oldest children are in their 20s now, and she said that it was the best with her oldest. His best friends, all the parents got together, and they decided, we'll take turns over the summer. Everyone planned one activity, whether taking them boating, taking them on a hike.
Listen, if you're listening and you get nothing else out of it, you have time before summer gets here. I love that idea.
And she said with her second, they didn't do that. And she saw a world of a difference. And I don't know if it was that another parent initiated it, but I just think we can't sit in the backseat as parents
and wait
we can't just hope. Every decision you make takes you someplace.
So from the interviewing of the moms, what then became this like formalized plan? What was the jump there?
We just started seeing from what I talked about as kind of those people in the middle that didn't feel good about what was going on but didn't know what to do, was people needed to be educated. And we thought, okay, what can we do? Maybe we need to have an event. There were a couple, I lived in Arizona at the time, and there were a couple of people that were actually speaking on this topic. We got in touch with Katie McPherson, who is amazing, that is really vocal about this. And where we lived in Arizona at the time, there had been, I think at that time, over 20 suicides just within like a 15-mile radius. Yeah. And she had seen a lot of them. She had been on triage as a counselor, as a school administrator. Yep. She had seen how kids are crying out on social media. Mm-hmm. Kids are wanting people to know that they're struggling, that they're feeling a certain way. But what we found was they're reaching out, they're crying out on these different platforms through any kind of touch,
but not to a person,
because they don't have that connection.
They don't know how to have those conversations.
And parents aren't having those conversations. And the kids don't know what else to do.
Okay.
And
so you were seeing some people start speaking, and you decided with your friend.
Yeah, we decided, okay, let's host an event. And
okay.
we had a friend who had a contact with a high school, and we thought, what if we just have this speaker come, and invited a couple of people put together. We had Seth from Anasazi come speak, and had 600.
Shout out to Seth, who's listening to this right now and editing it.
He was
he's
awesome.
Amazing. Yeah.
But we had the support of Anasazi at that event, and we had 600 people show up.
Awesome.
And it was similar to what we had been finding with these interviews, is where all these people came and people were leaving in tears. This is amazing. I needed this information.
Yeah.
But they were still saying, what do I do?
Yeah.
Okay, I have all these great notes. What do I do? And we found and are still trying to figure out the best thing.
Well, because technology is always changing.
Technology is always changing, and it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
You can't give someone this is what you should do in your family, even for your own children.
Because each child, I have one child that technology is a different trigger than it is for another child, and that's really hard to negotiate because within a family community, right?
Yeah.
The culture changes depending on whoever is the oldest at the time.
Yep.
And then the youngers think, well, that's going to be the rule. My friend Brooke Romney, I don't know if you're from.
I love.
She was on my Women of Worth show, and we were talking about that exact thing, that the younger ones come along and then they say, well, you did this with but you know what, we learned and we're back. We're circling back and pulling back a little. So did you come up with a blog, a website? What did you do?
So we started building a website. Okay. We had another event about 4 months later where we tried to put it together in a way where we had people sitting at round tables. They brought their kids. The kids went to one speaker and got some education, and the parents, and then we brought them together and tried to have some interaction, and again had over 700 people show up. Great turnout, some really great things. But I feel like with something like this whole technology conversation is, unless you feel something, you're not going to have the strength and the courage to make changes in your home.
Yeah,
because
it
it's
takes
not the
a
norm
lot
yet.
of work to be consistent as the parents.
It's hard.
It is
It's
exhausting
so hard.
sometimes.
Not
to be
even technology, but regular
showing
parenting
up,
things.
getting to the dentist, keeping milk in the house, keeping the laundry done.
And even
so validation to all the parents that are listening to this. Okay, we get that technology interferes with connection, because it does. I mean, I think even for me, I will pick it up. I always say, this is a tool. And I know that logically, and I wouldn't carry a hammer around all the time and say, well, I really love hammers because they help us hammer in nails and hang pictures. I won't have it with me all the time in case I need it. But this feels very emotionally connecting. And I know when I've gone through social media fasts, or I've tried to be more mindful, it's so easy to find myself just scrolling again. And so I think if you're the gatekeeper in your home, but you yourself are pulled in, it's a challenging. It's challenging. I can see in my own little family that it ebbs and flows too. So I feel like sometimes we're in a great space, and actually this week I don't feel like we are. So you're talking right now, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm making these mental notes okay, today when I pick up my daughter, how do we have a gentle conversation? Because she's very self-directed, and I don't want her to feel like I'm. So what's your advice for navigating what you found in these two events? Then there's not a one size fits all, and it's complicated, and it's layered, and the needs of the families are different. What were your next steps?
One thing I've loved in this conversation, from what I've learned, is just what you're saying, is that children learn by modeling. They don't learn by what we're telling them. Don't do this, don't do that. No, for all of us, I feel like for all of us, it's a good reminder, because you're right, when they see us and what we're doing. But I feel like, just like you mentioned, or maybe when we were talking before, we can't send our kids out into the world not having the skills to use these tools.
Because honestly, for those that know who I am and are familiar with my family, my son just served for our church a 2-year mission in Africa, where it wasn't a technology-based experience. Well, now 3 weeks after he got home, we had so many safeguards growing up with him. And now we're like, hey, hi, he moved out. He has the computer, the phone, the everything,
Wow.
and he's doing college and life and working and navigating all of that. And I felt like, okay, I'm going to feel a little bit more like my daughter's more prepared because she's had more access.
Yeah.
But she's a different kid.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
so
feel like
it's hard.
some of these different skills that we need to teach them, there are some people who say, you know, it's great for these elementary age school kids to be learning the iPads and navigating all the technology and stuff. The studies show you can learn when you're 10, 11, 12 and be just as proficient as if you're 5, 6, 7.
You're not behind.
You're not behind, and their little brains are developing.
Yes.
What kids need is creative play. They need to be outside. They need to be problem
and the texture
solving.
of like a paper and a pen.
Yes.
That process
There is
is
something to
painful
that.
if they
Yes.
miss a window of crayons and paper.
It's and so I feel like holding off on technology is only positive for those little developing brains. They have these brain centers now that these kids that have off-balance brains, and what they do to help them get back in balance is have them play at a playground, do cross-lateral movement, do things that build their brain and develop it in the way it needs to be developed.
Have conversations at dinner time.
Yes.
Where
so you move to the teenage stage now, and you're teaching them these different skills, and you want them to have experience. But a 13-year-old on Instagram is completely different than a 16-year-old brain on Instagram. You're so much more able to
For sure.
I mean, or if you don't do Instagram at all, whatever you choose to do.
And a 48-year-old brain on Instagram needs to be watched.
Right.
You know, like we're not immune to, I can often notice within myself, and I think this is one of those conversations maybe you advocate for, what is changed in me in 5 minutes? Why was I feeling pretty fine about life, and all of a sudden, well, usually it's 5 minutes of scrolling.
Yes.
And then subtly, I'm in comparison.
Right.
Oh, this speaker got that gig.
Yeah.
Oh, that author has sold this many books. Or I do a lot of work with suicide prevention. And so the other thing that will happen too is I will start to see some of the heaviness, you know, and all of a sudden I'm not connected to self, right?
Yes.
So nobody in my space is getting any of me either because I've been scrolling.
And I feel like what is so neat about this whole technology conversation right now is that we can totally relate to our kids.
Yeah.
We can see our teenagers start to get a little bit down, a little withdrawn, a little bit quiet, and say, maybe we've had enough time on the phone
So is that
today.
what you would
Let's
do?
go for a hike.
Is that what
Let's
you
go outside.
suggest to parents, is literally just saying, hey, you know what? I'm noticing you're seeming a little bit what? What do you say that doesn't make teenagers defensive? They will roll their eyes.
They will roll their eyes. They will roll their eyes. And I don't think there's one way to say it. I think it's trial and error.
Okay,
I mean, I've
so
said
what
things
would
in
you
a lot
say? What would you say to a child?
Well, and what I would probably say, because I pray, I would probably say a little prayer first because they are really touchy. Teenagers, it seems like they will really
push
not
back.
just roll their eyes, but push back. Yes, and so sometimes. Ooh, this is one that I just read. They're playing video games, and you know they've been playing video games for way too long.
Right.
Instead of going in and saying 5 more minutes and the video games are going off, you sit down next to them and you say, "What are you playing? Wait, which guy are you? Oh, wait, can I play the next round?" And you play with them for 5 minutes, and then you say, "Come help me make dinner." Then their connection cup is full.
Don't you love that? This is why you listen to the ReConnect podcast, because I love that. So I love that you're saying to them, you know what, I'm not judging where you're at. I'm trying to join you. But hey,
I'm on your team.
Yeah. But what if it comes to the place where that's not working, and like you have a child hypothetically that is on Netflix watching Gilmore Girls for the 30th time, because really that's the only appropriate thing at her age to be watching, because I was just scrolling this morning at the gym. And I was like, there's nothing good to watch, you know, that's going to uplift my spirit today.
Yeah.
What would you say to a child like that is not super pushback, but you can see it feels subtly like you're not having those conversations. They're light in their eye, or they're not having a desire.
And you can tell as parents. You can tell if you're watching, if you're listening, and if you're intentional. If you're too consumed with yours, you're never gonna see it.
You're not gonna see it. So first and foremost, you're saying you need to put yours down.
Yes.
And then you have to observe, and then you can say something about the fact that, you know what, I'm feeling this way.
Yes.
What are you noticing? Would you suggest that?
How do you feel right now?
Yeah.
Ask them, how do you feel right now? Something I've loved too is feeling like if kids aren't well-rounded, if they're only in their place or feel good about themselves when they're playing video games, when they're on social media, they don't have other talents, they don't have other interests. That's a huge thing we can do as parents is to say, okay, maybe they're not into sports or maybe they're not into music, whatever, find something. Maybe it's an art class. Maybe it's starting a book club with friends. Maybe it's making videos with friends, something like that, that they feel like they have abilities, they have talents, they gain confidence to have other things than this that's just those little dopamine hits.
I love that idea because it is. I was going to say that to you. It is a dopamine hit. And so it becomes very addictive.
Yeah.
And if you haven't ever tried to just say, I'm done for this many days, you don't even realize it in yourself.
You don't.
So I think acknowledging to your kids, hey, listen, I'm with you on this. How about we all put phones in baskets at dinner time?
Yes.
How about we all kind of check that we have limits? I know there's some apps that can kind of track how long you're on your phone and how much time.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised. I just heard this. I was trying to get it before today's conversation because I knew this was coming. But someone just told me Microsoft and I think one other, Amazon maybe, one big company did some research on if you took the number of hours a week on social media, you could train for an Olympic sport, learn a language.
List. Yes.
I mean, it's kind of astronomical.
It really is.
And what would you say, though, to kids that kind of say, Mom, I just need to chill out. I'm just tired.
Yeah.
This is my checkout time. Do you suggest to parents keep a limit? Just say, okay, great. I totally validate that, but we're going to watch the clock?
Yeah.
Is that what you would suggest?
And helping, I mean, in the earlier stages, if your 12, 13, 14-year-olds have devices that they're able to use on their own, it's going to be different than a 16, 7-year-old.
Yes.
And I love there's Better Screen Time is a new website out there where it's a family that they help you create your own family technology think tank. And they help take you through discussing as a family and there's all sorts of these things out there. There's really a lot of great resources if people just go and look that help you come up with what rules you want as a family and letting your kids in on that conversation.
I love that.
Because,
so there's a buy-in.
Yeah, so there's a buy-in, and as well as contributing to them developing some other skills, doing some fun family activities. My favorite line that we use at the New Norm is, it's never too early, it's never too late. If your kid's 17, it's not too late.
It's not.
You may have to take the phone. Another friend of mine just told me this. Last summer, they were going on a family trip, and she had seen smartphones ruin her sons. It's not going to make me cry right now.
We always cry on this podcast, so it's totally fine. This is emotional stuff. This is about life and death. In the work that I do and the work that you're doing, we're seeing the ramifications, and there's a lot pulling out families.
Yes.
We're all trying to juggle extracurricular work, home life balance. Many of us, like I do, work at home, so that those lines are mushed all the time.
Yes.
And these are the things that in a blink of an eye, it's this connection with your kids and relationships that matter the most. On your last moment on earth, it's not going to be, did I join, how many likes did I get on my post on Instagram, right? But if we don't start having this conversation, then we're all headed sometimes for a cliff we don't see until we're right over to the edge. So this mom
said, we're going on a family trip and we're not bringing our phones. And she had a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and then I think 13 and 8. And of course, she got huge pushback. But they left their phones at home. They just brought one for navigation and emergency purposes, and they started taking off. And she said the first several hours, probably that first day,
was horrible.
Horrible. Was miserable.
I love that we give permission. It's going to be hard at first.
Yes, it's going to be hard. But she said the rest of the week was heaven.
Oh.
It was heaven. Her kids were treating each other in ways they hadn't in years. They were playing. They were laughing. She said it was the best. It was the best week ever. And she didn't want to give the smartphones back when they got home, but she said it just was a good reminder to her that there's going to be pushback, but it's okay, because if our kids don't know how, it's maybe going to be forced upon them for a little while. We're having a week off, or we're having one day a week where we don't do any. They'll start to feel the difference. And that's when you just hope that then when they leave your home, they have those skills to say, I like when I feel when I'm in nature.
Yeah.
I like how I feel when I'm talking with a friend.
Yeah.
Once I've sucked 2, 4, 10 hours of my time on this, I don't like how I feel. And it will be
help give your kids words around those feelings, because I think as adults, first we've got to get clear on it ourselves. Anasazi Foundation does a lot of work with their wilderness programs, and I think it's it's crucial that when you have kids that are kind of in an SOS danger zone, one of the first things I've heard from practitioners, from therapists, from other programs is pull them away from technology, even for a 2-week period of time, to allow some regrounding, some centering, some reconnection with self, to know who they really are separate from what this identity is robbing from them or giving them. And so, I mean, I think that's a powerful statement about the power it has for good or for bad in our lives, right? Because obviously you're reaching people with this message because of technology.
Exactly.
And I know there's other advocates out there. I'm not going to say all their names. But some of them I don't love their approach because they're actually using the same platforms to reach, right? But I know in my work, I've often gone to God and said, can I turn everything off? And he said, no, but I have to keep learning to be wise with it. So just like we're teaching our kids, here's scissors. Remember back in the day when you have little ones and they're not old enough yet to do it? We are literally handing them something that...
You would never give your 2-year-old scissors.
You would never, but 2-year-olds and 1-year-olds are holding phones and learning how to navigate.
And like the things that we're letting our kids do. And feeling like, and I'm not an expert. I should have said that at the beginning. No. I'm not an expert.
But you're starting the conversation. You're giving permission to parents to start the conversation. And I hope today we're giving permission for those of you that aren't familiar with the new norm, that there are parents out there that have already started doing some of the groundwork and research for you. So I hope we're reaching the people that are like, something's felt off, but I needed permission to even bring this up.
Well, and this mother that started the better screen time they had moved to a new place, and they had given their, I think it was a 12-year-old daughter at the time, a smartphone just to be able to know where she was. They had an extra phone in the house, and after, I don't know how long it was, but they were noticing some changes in their daughter and some things that they just didn't like. So they pulled back. They gave her a flip phone. This is how we can reach you. This is how we can use it. And they just started saying, we need to be deliberate about what we're going to do when the right time is. And I think maybe that oldest child is 14 or 15 now, and possibly he does have a smartphone. And there's just, it's going to look different in every house.
I don't want to leave on a sad note, but I've just heard rumors that you cannot have smartphones anymore. Like the providers are not going to be able to cover the technology in the next year or so. Have you heard anything like that? Because my husband was doing some research, and a few other moms and I were having this conversation that I love smartphones, and I love that we have flip phones as an option when you know. And so maybe you don't have that answer, but I had heard that some of the providers now are not even going to be able to support the older technology anymore.
So for not having flip phones. Yes. No, I have. Yeah, I have. But I feel like
which makes me crazy, because I feel like we can have an outcry on that there needs to be an option.
There does.
There needs to be and I guess we always go back to the old telephone line at home if we had to.
Well, but I feel like there's a great enough need that I feel like there are people that see that. Or you can dumb down a smartphone. You can make it so you can only call or text, or there's ways. And when you're having
which is a good tip. That is a good tip. Yeah. Maybe if you're like, wait, we don't have a flip phone. There are ways that you can Google and get some, or call your provider and say, hey, listen, how can we strip this down a little bit?
There's so many great resources out there, and all it takes is a Google search. I feel like every major news source has done some special, has done on social media. So if you want any information, just give yourself an hour or two to go just start reading what's out there.
And can they find things on the New Norm?
Your website? newnorm.org. We have a list of some of the top books, some of the top articles, some of the top websites that are out there, and we're currently updating and going to be putting some new things on there.
Can they find you on Facebook and Instagram as well?
Okay. Yep. They can find
That's
me
where
on
we
Instagram.
reach the demographic, right?
It's on there. And honestly, if you take nothing else from this short time we had together, is just learn how to live in real life. Teach your kids to learn how to live in real life, because it's real relationships, real people, real tangible things that bring you happiness and help you connect. It's never going to be the technology.
Well, and I think that's important. Brene Brown always says we're wired for connection, right?
Yes.
But do you know connection requires vulnerability? It means that you and I, who have not met before today, get to have that moment where you just meet someone for the first time. Have your kids had that experience? And what is it like to look someone in the eye? What is it like to be in a conversation and have that awkward pause? What does it feel like when you're really having a yucky day and you don't really know how to talk about your feelings? things.
Yeah.
Those are the things that literally help us feel a sense of belonging.
Yes.
And when we don't feel that, literally the consequences are life or death. They are. We're not trying to be over dramatic here, but the statistics show the rate of suicide, depression, and anxiety, the divorce rate, the feeling of isolation that happens when then technology or other addictions take over a family or a life. It's worth having this conversation. And I love that your website is a clearinghouse for people to go to. And if you don't want to be the bad guy, I would say call a family meeting.
Yes.
Pull up one of the specials from
watch it together.
Watch it together and just ask your kids. Your kids, if they're going to be really honest with you, they will be able to identify at least, my teenage daughter, I remember her saying she doesn't have social media accounts. And I remember there was one little window there where everyone was using certain apps because it was fun. And we just said, we're not ready. Yeah. And then she came to us and said, you know what? No, I'm not. Because I've been around in gatherings now where the girls won't put down their phone and they don't know how to have a conversation. Yes. That's not to say that my daughter's in perfect harmony with her phone all the time.
Yeah, but that's huge.
But that's huge that she recognized that. And she came to me last week and said, I think I'm going to take this off my phone because it's become a distraction. So I trust her because she's self-directing, right?
Yes.
But there's still times where I'm just like every other parent out there trying to navigate that. But also, I think if you're not a parent and you're listening to this, this is a self-work, right? This is a self-work. And I would say, I even said to a friend last week out of accountability, I just said, you know what, for the next 3 days, I'm in a ton of vulnerability right now. I'm going into a lot of comparison. I'm going to say to you out loud as accountability partner here, I'm going to stay off social media. I'm going to post because of my work when I have to and not stay and hang out. Yeah. So I think that this is one of those podcast conversations we could go on forever. And thank you for starting the conversation and propelling it forward. And why don't you just remind everyone where they can find you, and then an invitation maybe as a takeaway today of what they could do tonight at dinner. Yeah.
Well, you can find us on Instagram at The New Norm, online, newnorm.org, and something that I've been thinking about so much, and actually the direction that Hillary and I have gone after having those 2 events that were great, super educational, lots of people, but just didn't feel like there was the takeaway there needed to be, is we've both started a small group. We've both invited 12, 13 women where we get together, we discuss topics, and are trying to form connections with people where we can have a support network. Because if you can, my challenge to you is, if you're listening to this, whether you have kids, no kids, whether you're a teenager or a young adult, make some decisions and then find one other person
that you have as a partner with you.
That you have. If it's just you and one other mom that you say, we're not doing video games at our house during weekdays, we're going to send them outside. You have that. Or if you say to my daughter, do you know what? If you can just have one friend, maybe your other friends just want to be on their phones, so go play with so and so because you know that you guys want to go sledding and you'll go do something.
I love that takeaway, Jessica. I love that takeaway that you realize that these big events start the conversation, but it's the small connection, right?
Yes,
it's the personal connection that allows for change to happen in our lives. Yes. Thank you for your work, and thank you for blessing me today and helping me have a different a talking point or two to bring up today with my child. She may not be happy that we did this part. No, she will. She will. Yeah, and that's the other thing is parenting is a marathon, and so your kids are not going to give you the praise and the raise. They're not going to give you praise and raise. It's true. Yeah. So that's why I love your idea. I love your idea of having another mom or another partner or a parent, a friend, even if you don't have kids, that you're accountable to, that praises you for these efforts.
You can cheer each other on. We all need each other. Less judgment, more love. We just need to support.
And isn't that true? It's going to be different for everyone. You're going to be like, oh, that whatever does whatever, and we don't. I have not enough time to look at my own plate. I can't look at your plate. Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all of you that have tuned in today at the ReConnect podcast. Thank you again, Anasazi and the Sturry Studios, for helping this happen today. Please share this podcast with someone that you think may need to start having this conversation around connection and technology, and join us again here on the ReConnect podcast.
Thank you for listening to the ReConnect podcast, sponsored by Anasazi Foundation. Anasazi Foundation is a wilderness therapy program for at-risk youth, and our mission is to help strengthen families. To learn more about us, please visit anasazi.org. And if you like this show, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Thank you again.